James Cole, welcome to Focus on the Fun Stuff.
Emma Mills, thank you for inviting me.
I'm really pleased you're here today. We've been part of each other's lives for a really long time, but we don't see each other very often. And when I created Focus on the Fun Stuff, you were definitely one of the people I thought I need to get James on and speak about this, because actually, and I'm gonna start this podcast by just kind of asking you a few questions about how you got into the industry that you did and what's brought you to today. But only a couple of days ago, I was on a podcast talking about the very first mastermind I was ever in. And I was telling the host, Will, how I was like this super tiny business and I was surrounded by all these multi-million-pound businesses, and you were one of them. I don't even know how I got into that room, to be fair.
Well, because you deserve to.
Yeah.
But I remember that for Carbon Andy and Michelle Moan sitting on everyone's knee. Yeah. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, yeah. My image of Michelle Moan was greatly broken after that couple of days, as I'm sure Nigel Boswell's vision of it was as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, so we've known each, God, that was 2014. So...
Okay, 11 years ago.
Yeah. In that time, you have grown a previous travel business specialising in cruises. You've grown it to 100 million. You've exited it. You're doing it again. And today I want to unpack with you how you're doing it and how you focus on the fun stuff. But I guess it'd be really great, James, if you could just, how on earth did you get into luxury, cruises? Because I know you've sold different kinds of cruises.
No, that is a fun story, Emma. So I did a degree at university. First one was a BA in Business and Innovation. And then I went to the University of Central Lancashire and I did an MBA straight after my first one, which is perhaps slightly unusual. But then, of course, I was after a job. And I actually wanted to be an accountant. Don't laugh, but I wanted to be an accountant. So I was looking for places that did management accounts.
Right.
And Air Tours, the travel company, which became My Travel, which merged with Thomas Cook back in 2007. This was late 1997. They were advertising for management accountants. So I went to the open day and they said, "Oh no, we're not recruiting for management accountants today." I said, "Oh, what are you recruiting for?" And they were recruiting for commercial analysts, basically.
Commercial
analysts,
right.
In the product department that price up holidays. And I said, "Oh, well, I'll go for that then." And I ended up working in the product and commercial team at Air Tours, quickly moved on to the cruise product. That was about 6 months later. And then I had basically a 10-year career at Air Tours, My Travel, eventually became Thomas Cook. And, at the end of it, I was, reasonably senior in the organisation, but decided to leave to set up my own business. So I've been in the cruise industry since 1998, 27 years, Mills here. I sound really old, don't I? I am. I've just turned 50. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that's how I got into cruising.
And was there a specific reason you honed in on cruising? Because the business you started sold nothing but cruises, ultimately.
Yeah, no, I just went with the flow, to be honest. It was a great company to work for, Air Tours, very progressive, very entrepreneurial for quite a large business. So there was loads of opportunities to progress in there for somebody from university. And I just ended up in the cruise team by accident, if I'm being brutally honest with you. And I just grew through there. So from being a, product manager, I became commercial director. And then over a number of years. Yeah. And then eventually I helped My Travel set up a cruise retail business called The Cruise Store, which was a fantastic opportunity to sort of be a plastic entrepreneur in a corporate wrapper.
Yeah, perfect.
Which we grew that quite big. We grew that to 120 million in 3 years. That was really good. But when I then set up my own business, which the first brand was Cruise118, I found out that setting a business up under a corporate umbrella was a lot easier than doing it on your own. So that's when the fun started, to be honest.
So when did you start Cruise118?
2008. Well, I famously say we sold our first cruise 10 weeks before Lehman Brothers went under. So that was trust me, that was not a fun time. It was absolutely horrible, but for a lot of people, obviously, but especially for us just starting a new business.
Oh my goodness. So, and Cruise118, is the 118 a play on
It was at the time
Was
because,
it?
of course, you dialed 118, 118. There were all those phone adverts with those two men running around
with the vests on.
in white vests with red stripes on. I thought, well, let's get on the back of that. Why not call our business Cruise 118? 118 being for information, so cruise information. Why not?
Amazing. So yeah, I mean, tell me a bit about that journey then. I mean, so you exited that. Was it just before COVID?
Yeah,
the business, and you'd got that up to about 100 million as well.
Just over 100 million, you
Wow.
know, a decent multi-million EBITDA. So we were in a pretty good place, but it was time for me to move on. We'd already sold most of the business to a company called World Travel Holdings that were the world's biggest seller of cruise holidays. We'd done that. We started the deal with them actually back in 2010. So they'd been partnering with us for quite some time.
Wow.
But I decided to sell my final shareholding and exit the business in March 2018. Then served virtually 2 years non-compete.
Right.
And during that time, I was just thinking about what I might do. You know, the opportunity wasn't over in cruising. It was going to keep growing.
As in the market.
As in the market, but the specific niche of the market that I was interested in was the luxury and ultra-luxury sector, which we'd done really well at with 6 Star Cruises, which was another brand that we launched in 2009. And we very quickly made that Europe's biggest seller of ultra-luxury cruises. So that market, having done some research during the 2020s, was going to grow exponentially. And indeed, the top 6 cruise lines that we now deal with, pre-pandemic, they had 28 cruise ships. Coming out of the pandemic, they had 35.
Oh, wow.
And they've got plans to take that up to more than 50 cruise ships. So just growing massively, a big opportunity for us.
Is this connected also to the aging population, baby boomers with lots of money, disposable income? Is that
absolutely. And I think what we've seen in the cruise industry is when I first started in 1998, it was, you know, all about 2 dinner sittings, and it was quite formal, and you know,
it's captain's dinner and
captain's dinner and all of that. But as the years have progressed, the whole industry has differentiated itself. So you've got mega cruise ships now with, you know, up to 10,000 people on board and 40 odd bars and restaurants. You know, that's one end of the spectrum. But the other end of the spectrum is all about high end, all inclusive, superb service. Everything's included. You know, everything's absolutely top quality. Smaller ships, loads of space, you know, completely individual holiday for people. And that's really the end of the market that I wanted to focus on.
Okay. And so the first iteration of the cruise business that you grew, we were just chatting very briefly prior to this, prior to sitting down, that I guess you're growing them in different ways. Are you approaching them differently? And I guess I'd just like to unpack a bit that first business from 2008 to 2018. What was that journey like? Were you focusing on the fun stuff? Were you enjoying it in there? Because it must have been a lot of people, a lot of things.
Absolutely no enjoyment whatsoever in the first 3 years of that business.
First 3 years, okay.
And that wasn't anything to do with working with some absolutely lovely people. My original business partner, Mal, absolutely fantastic guy. But it was just absolutely horrendous what we faced, you know. So we'd raised £1 million to launch the business. You know, I was serious about building a big business. You know, a big player in the luxury in the retail cruise market. So we'd raised this £1 million, and within 6 months, because of the world's biggest recession kicking off, we nearly went bust. We nearly run out of money. So it was absolutely horrendous for the first 3 years, just getting through that.
How did you overcome that, like that 6 month point then?
Just, I think it's one of the things in business, isn't it? Just absolute dogged determination. You know, nothing really special, I don't think, that we were doing. Just every day coming in, trying our absolute best, working as hard as we possibly could do at the challenges that we faced, you know. And January, I remember one particular time, January is always a very busy month in the travel industry. So we always built it up to be the catalyst for the growth that year. but we were struggling so much that if we didn't have a good January, it was that was it. It was good night Vienna for us. So on one Christmas Day, just because I was so nervous and was so apprehensive about what was to come, I drank half a pint of whiskey just to get through the day.
Really?
That's how desperate it had come there, and we weren't taking any money out, so it was putting a real strain on relationships at home and not spending time with the kids. It was really shocking for the first 3 years of that business. But somehow we got through it. Somehow we found a way each day, and all of these issues that came up, we just kept going. And we got through to the other side, and then we started building a business. Eventually it started to churn out some profits, and eventually we started to really grow and prosper.
Wow. I think every business owner's had that.
I'm sure.
Yeah, dark night of the soul kind of feeling, haven't they? Where they're like, they don't see a way out, but then there is no like, oh, this particular thing happened. It's just a combination of, I tried this, I tried hard, I rang the, you just keep going, you just keep going, don't you? And eventually you...
Especially, we probably had 30 or 40 people back then that were depending on us paying them every month.
That is
just... there was not one month we didn't pay payroll on time, and that was our priority, really, to look after our people, because, when 40 families are depending on you to pay them, that's a real pressure to make sure you succeed and make sure you do get up each morning more determined than the last to get through the issues that you've got.
Yeah. So when we met in 2014, like, I also just want to make it really clear, because I know some people could think, well, they raised £1 million. It's just like, you've got a lot of resource. But remember, like, you were in that mastermind sat next to me, literally going through lead numbers, conversions, Facebook ads. Like, you were fully stuck in the middle of it, aren't you? Like, trying to make it happen. What was from this kind of 3-year point onwards, what was the journey like up until your exit?
I think it's interesting you mentioned that £1 million. It sounds like, did they just have a big benefactor?
Somebody could
behind them or something
take that
could
perspective on it.
This was, remember this, we'd raised this money pre-global recession. So the banks were giving money out like it was going out of fashion, as long as you secured it against your house. So we had probably 400 grand.
Is that how you raised it? Secured against your own stuff?
It's called an EFG, I think, back then. And we raised 400 grand. Myself and Mal put our redundancy checks in from my travel. And, everything was in. We were all in. If this business had gone under, we were ruined as individuals. Our houses were gone and everything. There was nobody there in the background. Oh, lads, it's all right. Here's another 250 grand to keep you going. That was it. And we'd run out of money. So, yes, we might have raised £1 million, but we didn't have that £1 million after 6 months. Yeah. It was right. We've got to just survive. It was, street fighting our way through it, basically. Just scrapping our way through every single day and, making sure we had enough money to make payroll each month.
Yeah. It gives me goosebumps that, because it is definitely you find out how resourceful you are, don't you, and how resilient and I do think as well with those periods of times, it's always like this now, I guess, like re-talking through it, it's good to also remember, like, I got through that. I think often you can you get to the next shitty situation in business, like, how am I going to solve this? But actually, like, you've already been through 10 times worse. Or do I think it's like a really good exercise to... Yeah,
and I think that's the thing about starting Panache Cruises. I've got a little bit of experience behind me. I've got some knowledge. I've seen a few things. So when stuff happens at Panache Cruises, people around me might be a little bit concerned about it or not so sure what to do. One, I know it's not life threatening because I've been there before in terms of what can take your business down. And Panache Cruises, we've been in a really good position. We did start, and we should talk about it. We did start right in the middle of the pandemic. So that was an interesting.
You like to pick
time.
the times.
Yeah, but that was we deliberately. The big difference is we deliberately started in the middle of a pandemic rather than we didn't deliberately start just before the world's global markets collapsed. So I think if you do have that experience, it really does help you get through some tough times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just this, the first time around with the cruise business then, was it kind of full on, you were wedded to the business the whole 10 years? Like, how was that? I know obviously the first 3 years sounded very difficult, but just from your time, your, relationships, family, was it all in? Yeah,
so during the time at WTH, Cruise118, 6-star cruises and river voyages, there was a massive strain on me personally. Ended up getting divorced during that period, so that was particularly challenging. And it was just all consuming, to be perfectly honest, just to get through, and probably that took its toll in the end.
Was that part of your decision to also go, we've created something amazing?
Yeah, look, I'd done 10 years corporate at My Travel, and by 2018 I'd done 10 years at WTH, and it was just time for something else. It was time for a fresh perspective on things, and perhaps looking at things in a different way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then, so you started Panache Cruises at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So actually, just tell me then, why did you decide to start it then? In the pandemic, why was that more strategic start point?
Yeah, well, it was obviously a little bit of a risk. A lot of people said it was quite a big risk, but I saw it as an opportunity, to be perfectly honest. In the middle of, or at the start, well, we sold our first cruise in July 2020, so that proved to be the start of the pandemic. Of course, we didn't know that then, nor did anybody else in the world. So we assumed that we were a good way through the pandemic.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people on furlough. There were a lot of people being made redundant because there were no cruise ships sailing. So we were able to get the pick of a pretty good team from people that we'd worked with before and other people that had been displaced by some of our competitors. So that was a great opportunity for us. And then customers were up in arms with the retailer that they were working with, or the cruise line that we were working with. So we just basically set up a pretty basic social media campaign and said to people, hi, we're Panache Cruises. We don't actually sell cruises at the minute, but we've got loads of experience. We're here to help. And within 2 months, we'd built a database up of, I think it was about 12,000 cruises just in 2 months by doing a bit of a Facebook campaign. And that was basically how we started the business. That was in May and June 2020. And then we actually went on sale in July 20.
Because I guess you had so much attention of people just scrolling. And
just wanted help, what's going to happen to our cruise. And not that we knew, but we could give them a little bit of reassurance that, the cruise lines are very respected companies, and, we could give them the information that we knew about and promised to give them any more as and when we heard about it. So we just did what we could for customers, and it seemed to resonate pretty well with them.
So that's actually just a really smart, just from a marketing perspective then. So you did a lot of email collection ultimately, and you built a database that you could then start to, when you were ready to sell. Promote
and I think there's been a couple of sort of guiding principles for us when we started Panache Cruises. So we've got a couple of things. One's called our Vision 2020, and we had this before we started selling cruises, and it's really simple. Colleagues, customers, cruise lines, nothing is too much trouble. That's our Vision 2020. So we call it the three C's actually, and colleagues comes first for a reason, because we absolutely put our colleagues first. So we've created a fantastic working environment. We've got a great office in Chorley that we've invested significant monies in to make it a really nice working environment, because of course people were really pulled to home working after the pandemic. So we've created an office that we want that people to come into rather than feel they have to come into. Nice.
So what does just some of the things, what does that look like, having a really nice office?
We've got huge amounts of space in there. We've got some great meeting rooms. It just feels like an office that you'd sell luxury cruises from. We've got an amazing coffee machine. It's just a really nice place to work from. And then we did similar when we set up our office in Orlando. That's a nice place to work as well. But I'm sure we'll come on to that. So colleagues, it was just all about what can we do better for our colleagues from day one. So we make sure they've got a great environment. Everybody gets access to private medical cover. Everyone gets an enhanced pension. One of my favourite things that we do with a local wealth manager, Daintree in Manchester, is they come in every 6 months and they'll do hourly one-to-one meetings with every member of the team, just to talk about their own personal financial position and how they can help them plan what retirement might look like, even if it's, it might be 40 years away for some of our younger people. So, and I think that's really, really helped engage people about, how important pensions are and how important it is to plan, so we just try and do things like that, and just try and create a really good atmosphere. 6 months maternity leave we give to ladies who are having a baby, 6 weeks paternity leave, and we've just introduced just this week actually just a more flexible working during kids' holidays. So if parents do want, we encourage people to spend more time with the kids during kids' holidays. We'll just be a little bit more flexible than we usually do, and if you want to work on a Saturday instead of during the week and take the kids to the fun park or whatever it might be, they can just do that. So just create that environment, because of course if we do that for colleagues, they look after our customers, and our customers are hugely important for us. And what we do with customers is we give them their very own connoisseur from the first moment they contact us right the way through to them returning from their cruise holiday, and just give them that high-end personal service. So that works particularly well too.
Oh wow, amazing. And just in terms of the colleagues and then the customers, they have like a dedicated, you call it a connoisseur, I guess, it's like a point of somebody that looks after them the whole way through the journey. And how do you, because I know for lots of business owners, getting that essence of you, if you like, want of a better word, of how you would look after a customer, getting that into your team, like this is the James Cole way of looking after a client. How do you do that at Panache?
Well, we just instill in people that, we might be at the end of the phone, but we don't want that to be a blocker to great customer service. So, everyone's always available to any customer. None of our managers are in a meeting, and I'm always available. So every single customer has my email address and mobile phone number. They're free to contact me if they wish to.
Wow. And does that happen often?
No, not particularly, no. We just try and make it, a place where people want to give great service, and, customers respond really well. So, one of my favourite stats is just over the last 4 years, our top 40 customers have spent £6.7 million with us and booked 470 cruises with us, so we must be doing something right. Yeah.
What brilliant stat. The top 40, did you
say?
Just
the top 40 customers in the UK. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is a lot of cruises.
Or
maybe it's a lot. It's a few expensive cruises.
No, it's a lot. 470 cruises. So wow. So nearly average of just about 12 each.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So I feel like you're injecting fun stuff into your business for your colleagues, for the customers. What about for yourself? So in terms of your journey now, the second time around, obviously you've learnt a lot. You've been through the absolute mill and come out of it. Like, what I would be really interested to know what you've taken from the business journey so far into the new business.
Yeah, I think, I was quite pragmatic when I set up, or when we decided to set up Panache Cruises, and I was very determined not to get sucked into the bullshit of being an entrepreneur and a startup. I think a lot of books that you read are about, oh, you've got to work 27 hours a day, 12 days a week, and you can't possibly take a holiday for the first 5 years of starting a new business if you're really serious about it. Well, I just thought, no, I don't think that's the case. So, in the early days, in the first 3 years, I used to get up early. I'd get up at 5 o'clock. I'd do a 90 minutes, the old Nigel Botterill, 90 minutes.
Love it. Which for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's literally 90 focused minutes on getting customers or keeping customers, growing your business, isn't it?
Yeah, just whatever the priority was for that day, just get it done first. And if you've done the most important thing that you needed to do that day, then what could possibly go wrong that day? So get those 90 minutes done. Perhaps have some breakfast with Heather, my wife, and my kids, and then go into the office. I mean, in the early days, it was quite easy because the office was our garage, so just go and sit in the garage for the day. It's a nice garage, but go and sit in the garage with a few of my colleagues, and have a great day. But finish at 3 or 4 o'clock, so I'm getting in a full day's work, but I'm then going spending some time with my family, or I'm going for a run, or I'm doing something that's for me. Now, don't get me wrong, on occasions you've got to work later, haven't you? Because of business demands, and my brain never switches off anyway, and perhaps I'll have to work a weekend, or I'm travelling. So, I'm never so far away from work. I'm always glued to my phone, and my laptop's never too far away, but just trying to do things in a different way. So, I travel quite a bit as well, Emma. I think with internet connections these days, you don't have to be chained to your desk, do you? You can be in different places, So I've just spent 2 days in Florida this week. I've been to a meeting with some of the cruise lines, but pretty much kept up on how things are going, because you can get 8 hours of work done on the plane just with a decent internet connection these days.
Yeah, totally. So the office in Florida then, can we just chat about that a little bit? Because, well, one, what was the reason for setting up the office in Florida? And two, I would love to know, I mean, I know lots of business owners will struggle just with the team that they've got here in terms of making sure they're doing what they should be doing, how they're doing it. How are you managing that as well? So
I mentioned before that we had a couple of guiding principles, one being Vision 2020. We've got something else called Mission 2030. And our mission, it's quite a big one, to be honest, but our Mission 2030 is to be the world's largest retailer of luxury and ultra-luxury cruises.
Wow.
And the only way we can achieve that realistically is by selling and becoming a decent-sized player in the US, because that market's 4 to 5 times the size of the UK.
Oh my
so
goodness.
It was a plan from day one to get established in the UK. Establish our culture and our values, and make sure we had a team there and got some traction in terms of sales. But then to look across the pond and set something up over in the US. So we did that. We opened our office last July in Orlando. Great office out there. We've got some 10 great people that are there, some 10 connoisseurs, and it's gone really well. The American public seems to like our marketing. We do very similar marketing to what we do in the UK. The cruise lines have been hugely receptive to working with us in the US as well. So it's all worked really well.
Amazing. And that, it's all worked really well. That sounds really simple. And I would just love to dive in a little bit more. So, setting up the office in Florida, you've clearly the culture of Panache and your principles, and you've got clear, really clear, I guess, statements at the very top of the tree in terms of what we're about, what we're trying to achieve. So I totally get that makes it much simpler for team members wherever they are to know, well, that's the end goal. But in terms of setting up the office, the recruiting, the culture, how have you made sure that what happens in Chorley happens in Florida? Chorley to Florida also sounds great.
It's great. It's like it's a bit like Del Boy.
Yeah, like Peckham.
Right. Okay. Well, I think you've always got to have a plan, haven't you? So, so we had this mission. We not just a plan. We have a mission to be the world's biggest seller of luxury cruises. So to do that, we knew we had to go into the US market. You know, we're pretty confident that was going to be one of our big plays, you know, but we wanted to set the foundations first. So we knew that. So we had that plan. But how do we do that? How do we expand into the US? There's not many UK travel companies that have successfully gone over to the US.
Right.
So I did manage to speak to a couple of people that have done it well. So I gleaned some intelligence and some experience from those people. So I'm grateful to that. We also got introduced to a guy, Dave Marshall, who's based in Austin, Texas, an American guy who helps British companies set up in the US. So again, just using my contacts that I've had for a number of years, I managed to get, you know, a little bit of intelligence about setting up in the US. But when it comes down to it, you've just got to get on with it, haven't you? You've just got to go over and do it. So,
and have you gone over and spent a lot of time there with the team to?
Yeah, I think I was over there eight times, for example, last year. I've already been in the office 3 or 4 times this year. So yeah, spend a little bit of time over there. You know, a couple of days at a time. But the recruitment of people was interesting because we actually used a recruitment company based in Preston, just up the road from Chorley. Yeah, to recruit people in the US. So Martin helped us at higher recruitment, and
oh my goodness,
that worked really well for us. But me and my colleague Anna, who's our partnerships director, she's been with us a couple of years, absolutely fantastic at what she does. Anna helped me set up the US office, and we went over there in May last year, the day before the guys were going to start. And you know, you hear stories about people not turning up for the work, and you know, not starting on time. And we were there in an office. We'd just been to the equivalent of B&Q and bought some office plants and all of this sort of stuff.
Oh, really?
And we were literally like, what the fuck is going to happen tomorrow? Is no one going to turn up? Are they, you know, we'd never met these people, of course, because it was all over Teams that we'd done the interviews. You know, will they be what they say they are? And,
oh my
God.
God.
We were really fortunate. The people who turned up were absolutely fantastic.
So
and
all 10 started at the same time?
All 10 started at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
We just had one home worker, Paul, who was in Boston. He joined us a few months before he just got wind of what we were doing and wanted to do something different. So Paul joined us a few months earlier. But yeah, these other guys were just all starting on the same day. But we were very fortunate. You know, we were lucky. Martin had done a great job for us, and most of those guys are still with us now. How
fantastic! So then, did literally you and Anna spend the rest of that time that you were there onboarding them, bringing them into the Panache way?
Yeah, we spent, I think we were only there for 3 or 4 days, but we then had another colleague, Emma, who came over to train them for 2 weeks and spend some time there trying to get the culture of who we are, because obviously we're a British company, bringing sort of British ways of working, a British culture into an American way, which I think was met with a lot of scepticism to start off with. But people grew into the culture that we offered, you know, giving them 20 days holiday. They would say, why would you give us 20 days holiday? We should only be getting 5 or 10. And
because that's standard in the US.
That's the standard over there, certainly at a startup in the first year. And, you know, well, if we don't make any sales in a week, will you just fire us? No, we're quite patient. You know, we'll just work with you, and we'll keep working at things, and you know, we'll keep progressing things. So took us a while to bring them into our culture, but as soon as we'd done that, then they were off and running. And then we're very fortunate. One of our colleagues in the UK, Sam, and assisted by another colleague, Andy, Sam has spent pretty much 50% of his time over the last 9 or 10 months in Florida. So he's worked as our head of sales over there, and just been with them as much as possible to get them up to speed on selling luxury cruises.
And when did he go over there? Sorry,
basically from June last year.
And when did you open the office?
June last year.
June last year, sorry. Okay. No, because I was going to like dig a bit further to go, because I feel like for so many small to medium-sized businesses, the culture is ultimately the founder of the business. So I know we've already mentioned him, but like Nigel's energy and the way he likes to do things is very much in the entrepreneur circle. Yeah. And just kind of probing into that, how, like if James isn't in that office, how do you make sure that that is still the way, the way to do things? And I just wanted to ask, like, obviously I know you've had this guy over there as well, which I'm sure is helpful, but would you say that the culture is systemized then in a way?
Yeah, I think, we've got a team now in the UK. There's 58 people in the UK team, and there's 10 in the US. So I think, we're in that sort of scale up phase, I guess, now. And one of the things that we decided to do last year was we recruited a culture consultancy. So they're called Culture Nav, and Culture Nav do culture temperature checks every week on every single person in the business. They do quarterly workshops and quarterly one-to-ones with a selection of the team as well. So we get feedback on where we're at the cultural stage of the business.
Oh my God, how brilliant.
Both in the UK and the US. So that really, really helps us. And one of the early bits of feedback was that if I wasn't in the office, then people wondered where I was, and people missed me basically, which that's really nice to hear. But on one sense, it's just a bit of a wake up call that we need to we just need to make sure that we push the culture further down the organisation, and as it grows, obviously it can't rely on me, but it also can't rely on the senior team, as well.
Totally.
So we've got to work really, really hard on the communication side of things, making sure that we're getting across what's happening in the UK to the US people, and what's happening in the US to the people who work in the team in the UK. It's really, really important that they understand what's going on across the whole business. So that was a really important move for us as well. And the other thing that we did, which was a really early decision, is that we appointed someone as head of people and culture as well.
Really?
Rihanna joined us last August. Feedback was that most companies look for a head of people and culture when they're probably 150 to 200 employees. Well, we were about 50 employees when we took on Rihanna. So again, just committing to that focus of our colleagues being first, and understanding where they're at and where they want to be in their career, and making sure we've got plans for their progression, making sure they've got objectives, 90-day plans, and making sure they're comfortable in their role.
Wow, I love that. There is so much in that. I do think it is one of the hardest things as you scale, if you don't give it any attention, obviously, but just that getting the culture to, as you say, like dissipate down if you're not in the office or if one of the senior team, it's, and I think, I know at my PA I've spoken about it so many times as we grew quickly in the pandemic, all of a sudden, like what you just think it kind of happens by osmosis at some point, but it doesn't. You actually need to have, I talk about Friday Pulse a lot, which is a piece of software we use where our team members can say how happy they've been, any suggestions, ideas, and I guess it's like a light version of the culture company that you use. But I guess it is part systemization, isn't it? And
trying to get processes in place, trying to make sure we've got a plan for next financial year, which we've been working on over the last few weeks. Our financial year starts in June, so only a few weeks away, and then just breaking that down into 90 days, into 2-week sprints. Amazing. Making sure people's objectives align to that, making sure we understand where people want to be in 12 months or 2 years' time, so we can put them on a development plan. I mean, we're not a perfect organisation. We have plenty of issues that we need to deal with. But again, we have a plan, and we're trying to implement that plan so that we can hopefully not see as many growing pains as we would have if we didn't put those things in place.
Oh my gosh, totally. Because without all of that, I do think that is where a lot of the growing pains come from, especially when you're a people-heavy business.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if the people aren't happy, everything kind of comes downstream from that, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
That was amazing, James. There's so much in there, because I think even just for smaller businesses, just having like the vision like you do, the 3 C's, just this kind of thing starts to really, really easy for any team member to go, oh no, but that's what we're about. That's where we're going.
Yeah, and again, I think with Panache Cruises, we have stayed honest to our Vision 2020. We are absolutely on track for our Mission 2030. Even though it's a ridiculously big target that we've set ourselves.
What is that target? Is that like, as in is it 100 million again? Is it like a market share? How do you?
Yeah, it's quite a bit bigger than we've done before, but
right.
We want to break through that ceiling. But a lot of those sales, the challenge this time is to do most of those sales, or the vast majority of those sales in an overseas market that we've not worked in before. So I think that's the biggest challenge that we've got. But perhaps an even bigger challenge is to do it in the right way, to have a long-term view, to look after our people first, continue to provide great customer service even when we've scaled the business significantly, and to be honest to our values. We have a set of values for our business, and they're really, really important to us, and we do our best, and we strive to work to those values each and every day, and we put a lot of effort to communicate those values to people who are in the business, whether they're new or they've been with us since day one. So that's really important to us. And like I say, I can't say we're perfect at that. I can't say we're we've still got work to do, but that we've got a plan, and we try and stick to it.
Yeah. And just on the values, sorry, just one more question on it. How do you communicate the values? How do you make sure that that people know what they are? Like if you went up to somebody that's been there 6 months, said, what the about, like how do you implement that?
Well, simple things like what do we have? We have the values on windows around the office. Each of our meeting rooms are named after one of our values. We have a team meeting every single week for the whole business, and we give out Star of the Week. And you can only be Star of the Week if you've been nominated by one of your colleagues who's used one of the values. So you've displayed one of the values. So we have a number of different things that we use to just try and keep them alive. We make sure they're covered off in appraisal sessions and objective setting, that people are working to those values. I
love that. We have a similar thing at my PA called the WOW checks, and our team members can write each other checks, which is based on, thanks. One of ours is unwavering reliability or relationship builders, and they can thanks so much for helping with that client relationship, or can kind of, because you one of the things as you grow is you don't get to see all the good stuff that's going on, and having team members able to, I guess, shine a light on another team member, having that kind of facility to do that is really important,
that's really
isn't
important,
it? Yeah, totally. So when we first met in the mastermind, ultimately that mastermind, I guess, was about growing your business, but the core is marketing, isn't it? So am I right in saying I would say you're a marketing-led founder? Like I feel you're very in the thick of what that looks like for your business.
Yeah, I do enjoy marketing, and we're definitely a marketing-led business. We look to increase the number of leads coming into the business every month. We've got KPIs coming out of our ears in terms of site visitors, conversions, etc. So but we try and look at marketing in a little bit of a different way, because I think a lot of retailers are very price focused and very sell when they're presenting products in front of customers. Again, we try and be a little bit more informal with people. We try and talk to people. We try and give them content. I write. And I encourage the team, to write their own copy for emails that we send out. They're quite informal and familiar with people, and just write about experiences. So all of our team are very fortunate that they get to go on cruises each year. So write about your experience in your own words. It doesn't need to be the King's English, but you just write about it in your own words with your own pictures and your own honest thoughts. And, I think customers respect that, don't they? So, and you can build up a community and a loyal following from that, which has worked really well for us.
Yeah, and yeah, I find that really interesting because, as we know, people buy people. And even though, do you get that level of personal touch with most travel companies? I would suspect not. There's nobody I can think of, maybe Virgin with Richard Branson's kind of pizzazz on it. But the fact that you bring in that level of personality into it, I'm sure is one of the things that's setting you apart from your competitors.
Yeah, well, we've got our own plans and our own way of doing it. I'm sure it doesn't resonate with everybody, but we have a loyal bunch of customers. We're adding to that each month, so it obviously resonates with some people, and those are the people that we're catering for. Those people that want to go on multiple cruises a year. Those are the people that we're after.
And so ultimately, your marketing. So is your perspective on marketing to just keep helping as much as possible and provide as much value and to be there when somebody's ready to book?
Yeah, I think we look at marketing slightly differently than I've looked at before, which we're very patient marketeers. So we'll look to social media or digital channels to perhaps, convince a prospective customer to give us their data to start off with. So we start very, very high up in the marketing funnel. So we're not necessarily going out there and saying, hey, do you want to buy a cruise holiday? We're saying to people, hey, would you like to learn a little bit more about cruising? Or if you like cruising, would you like to learn a little bit more about luxury and ultra luxury cruising? And, we'll send people guides or brochures or videos. And, for that, they give us their data, and then we'll keep that content going until someone's in market. And then hopefully they'll give us a chance then. And then, of course, they're introduced to their very own connoisseur who provides a very good level of customer service to them. And hopefully we get the booking and they come back to us time and time again. That's the theory of it all.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's the same theory that I've always practiced as well, which is just create as much value as you can to help people without asking for anything in return, with the exception potentially of an email address, but actually just giving as much value as you can so that you're positioned as these guys know what they're talking about, and that when they're ready, you're there to go, yeah, no, we can help. Honest, I guess it's the original Gary Vaynerchuk way of jab, jab, right hook, whatever his book was called. I'm sure that's the title, where you just keep giving value, and at some point they're going to go, oh no, I'm going to buy from you now. And I think most people aren't patient enough to do that, are they? They just even with the podcast now, this is for me is very much very, very so top of funnel, just helping people. It's hard running a business, and just knowing that that kind of it's building relationships and trust, isn't it, without actually being sat across from somebody.
Yeah, and the average time for somebody, when we're doing a prospecting campaign, as we call it, the average time for somebody coming onto the database to actually booking with us is 12 months.
Wow.
So, we've got to be pretty patient. So we're investing quite a bit of money into social and digital marketing, but we've now got four and a bit years knowledge and stats and return on investment numbers, etc., to understand that if we invest £1 now, we're going to get that £1 back, but we're going to have to be patient. But it works well for us.
Mm-hmm. And your business now is growing. It's not a small, medium-sized business. It's a big business. I think with small, medium-sized businesses, the advice always is to give up the sales and marketing last. As you grow in your business. I know Nigel's always said that. Other people that I follow. Are you taking a similar approach, would you say? Are you still very much what's happening in terms of the strategy, the content?
Yeah, I get involved in different aspects of the business, but we've got a pretty big team now. I do still think we're an SME.
It doesn't feel like it.
But we're growing quickly. But I take a keen interest in product, liaison with the cruise lines. I take a keen interest in the marketing side of things and customer service side of things, as well. But, and of course I like seeing the numbers as well from a finance point of view. But, it's not it's not my role to get involved now in the day-to-day doing of things, or I'll occasionally sign off an email or something, or pick out something on a specific email that gets sent round. But I'm more on the periphery, I'd say.
Yeah, but when you first started Panache as well in the pandemic, were you driving it from a marketing strategy perspective?
Yeah, there were about 6 of us in the business, and we were fortunate that we had 2 or 3 marketing people, so we just did it as a team. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the journey now, and obviously it's exciting. So is it 2030 was the date?
Mission 2030.
Mission 2030. Yeah. You're enjoying it. You're focusing on the fun stuff in your business. And for anybody listening now, and I don't want people to think, oh, well, it doesn't apply to me, because I do think whether it's 100 million business, 50 million, 100,000, I still think there's principles that apply. What would you say are the key things now that you're thinking, no, this is much more enjoyable, or the advice that you would pass on to say, this for me makes it an enjoyable thing, this business?
Yeah, I think just make sure, people say, don't they, make sure you do something you love. I absolutely love working in the cruise industry. I absolutely love marketing. I absolutely love the people I work with. So I'm very, very privileged, aren't I, that I can go into the office every single day, and I love every minute in there.
Oh, really?
I do. I absolutely love it. But I also like going home as well. So I've got a really nice balance. I'm very, very fortunate. I go on some lovely holidays as well. Take customers with me as well, as on a number of occasions a year. So I have a fantastic time, and work's just part of that. I'm not the world's biggest fan of the term work-life balance. I think it's just life balance, isn't it?
Totally agree.
The one thing I think I've done, which again I learnt this the hard way, but for Panache Cruises, I've been more selfish, and I think people use that word in a very negative way.
Yeah.
But again, the old adage on an aeroplane, I've just come off one this morning, what do they tell you to do? Put your own oxygen mask on first before you help anyone else. And, I see a lot of people who have very busy jobs, or they're busy in business, and they're not looking after themselves. They're not putting themselves first. And I think
do you mean both physically and mentally?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a fundamental flaw, isn't it? We all need a break. We all need to look after ourselves. We should all be eating a little bit healthier or doing a little bit of exercise. You know what you need to do to make yourself a little bit better. So I think that's one thing that I've done, which is, focused on myself and just tried to make myself a better person. And I think that the best example I can give you of that is in 2018, I stopped drinking. I've not had a drop of alcohol since 2018. And
really?
It's, absolutely made me a different person, to be perfectly honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I've chatted about this once before with Will Paulson on this podcast, but I would love to just ask you about that, because it is an interesting topic to me, because I do love almost like the ritual of the opening of the wine, and it's like it feels like a kind of a celebration of something good's happened at work. I kind of love the whole thing that goes around it. Yeah. But I do know that it probably sometimes has effects on, not that I'm drinking every night, but sometimes that has effects on productivity one day. Or so, yeah, just what made you stop, and what has the impact been since?
Yeah, so what made me stop was, probably needed to lose a little bit of weight, get a bit fitter. Was probably drinking a bit too much. I probably was having that bottle of wine every night, but I thought that was fine, just at home, they have a bottle of wine when you get in, bottle of wine with your tea or whatever. Then, bottle of wine, a glass of wine. Let me rephrase that. Sorry, that sounds really bad. A glass of wine when you get in from work, glass of wine with your dinner, and then a glass of wine afterwards. You've finished the bottle, haven't you?
Yeah.
So, and when you add that up over the course of a week, that's a shed load of drink you're putting away. So, and then if you go to the football on a Saturday, which is what I used to do, again, and you just have a few pints, it really adds up. So, it's definitely drinking too much. And I just wanted to, be healthier, and I think just be there as well. I perhaps,
be present.
On occasion, I probably didn't like the person I was when I'd had a bit too much as well. So, there were all sorts of things. But I was only looking to give up for a year.
Right.
I used to do dry January, as a lot of people do. But I thought in 2019, I'll try not to drink for the whole year. I've not touched a drop since. So I don't preach to anyone, by the way.
No.
Drinking in moderation, good luck to you. No problem with that. Just I'm one of those. I'm quite a black and white person. If I'm drinking,
or you're not.
I might as well drink properly rather than just have the odd glass of wine here and there. So just don't touch it anymore.
Wow. And just from turning up to work and being present, and would you say it's just, I don't know, is it more about consistency now in who you are and what you're able to do? Do you know, rather than the impact of maybe feeling a bit sluggish, feeling a bit tired?
Yeah, and I think you also realise that, you don't need alcohol. I think I again, from my perspective, perhaps before I gave up drinking, I thought to go to it, so I'm going to an event tonight, I need a little bit of Dutch courage, a couple of glasses of wine to get me into the event, and I'll just enjoy myself. But then that means I need to get a taxi there, a taxi back. I'm not going to be particularly good mood tomorrow morning. I'm going to be a bit sluggish. Whereas, I've driven into Manchester today, so I've now got flexibility when I can leave, can go home, get a good night's sleep, and I'll be in the office nice and early tomorrow morning.
Sleep is actually one of the biggest parts of this, isn't it? Like even just one drink interrupts it. And since I got a Whoop band, that has been one of my biggest eye openers. Just even one drink, immediately your sleep's wrecked, isn't it? And it has such an impact on you the next day on what you get done. Even that, I don't fancy the gym now because I'm not feeling it, or going out for a run. It's an absolute sleep wrecker, isn't it? Yeah,
and again, that's, like you say, fairly underrated, I think, in some people's eyes. But 7.5, 8 hours sleep a night is one of my priorities, definitely.
Oh my God, I
totally
sound
agree. Really boring, don't I?
No, not at all. I'm all for this now. I went to Dubai the other weekend on a Hindu weekend, and I was the first one to bed each night. And literally in my head now, I'm so much like, I know how terrible the day is if it's not 7 or 8 hours. Like if any less than that, and you're just not functioning properly, are you?
No,
it's just a waste of a day.
Yeah.
Totally. I love that you've mentioned that, not just about the drinking, but just about putting yourself first. Because I think a lot of business owners, whether the shit's hit the fan or it's just a particularly, you've lost your biggest customer, it's a challenging time, there's just a natural impulse for a lot of us to go, well, I'll just keep working. I won't go to the gym. I'll stay in front of my laptop. But actually, there's so much more, isn't there, from going, no, I need to keep the things going that serve me well.
Yeah, exactly. And, just prioritise things as well, I think, Just make sure you're doing those most important tasks. So again, I think that's...
In the business, do you mean, or for yourself?
Well, both. I think, we tend to have a plan even for the weekends. It's not like military precision or anything, but just have a bit of a plan of what we want to do at the weekend.
Yeah.
And I think you do then reflect at the end of, on Sunday, we've had a really good weekend because we've got some things done and we've balanced it in the right way, done a few chores, but had a really good time as well with the family, and perhaps had a round of golf or whatever. But if it's planned in, it gets done, doesn't it? So
I love that.
Works well.
I love that. The more you plan in, actually, the more time you have, don't you?
Yeah.
Because you're just more in control of it. I absolutely love that roundup, James, because I think also starting from the fact of when you started your first business, you're doing your 90 minutes in the morning. I think having the key things done in your business that are most meaningful, like that are going to push it forwards, and for yourself, are probably two of the most important things you can keep doing, isn't it? Which is hard to do, I know, when you're in the midst of, oh my God, how are we going to pay wages and all of that.
But how long does it take if you're on a train or something just to come up with a plan?
Yeah.
We start off with a plan for the day, plan for next week, plan for, we've got a plan for 2030. Now, I can't tell you what the specifics of that is, but we've got a plan of what 2030 looks like, like a straw man type of thing. And then for the next 3 years, there's a bit more detail there, business plan, you might call it. And then for next financial year, we've got that broken down by month, by specific departments in the business. And then for the next 90 days and the next 2 weeks, we've got very, very specific plans for individuals in the business, because, again, something... a phrase, I heard once is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, isn't it? It looks ridiculous, the goal that we've got for 2030. But if I'm doing today what I need to do today to keep myself on that path to 2030, that's all I need to worry about, isn't it? I don't need to worry about the big picture. I just need to worry about those 3 things that are on my list. Let's get those off today. And I now know I'm on my path to 2030. I'll worry about what I need to do tomorrow.
Oh my God, I love that. That is the perfect place to finish, James. That is that was.
I've not rehearsed that.
That was a perfect summary of how you make the big things happen, which you are doing. James, thank you so much for coming on Focus on the Fun Stuff today. If we do have any listeners that are mad about cruises, just where do they find your business?
PanacheCruises.com.
Oh,
Simple as that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Em. Great to see you.